We are entrusting the day and the endeavor to the Lord. Let's go. Welcome to my channel where I visit many good books but live in the Bible. My name is Christina, and today I would like to talk about Shakespeare's play, Hamlet. I picked this up for a class that I am currently in on meditations on art, death, and the afterlife, having never read the play before. And after I finished reading it, I was like, oh, this is where so many Shakespeare quotables are from. And also, Hamlet be cray, which is not a hot take because most of the people in this story think that Hamlet has gone insane. Brief summary. The play opens with Hamlet, our Prince of Denmark, grieving the untimely death of his father, the king, and stewing over the fact that his mother, the queen, has married his uncle, the late king's brother, just like a month after his father has died. Hashtag frailty, thy name is woman. And Hamlet only gets more miffed when his father's ghost appears to him and tells him, yeah, it was murder. Like, my brother poisoned me, took my crown and queen. Oh, and the queen, your mama, she was in on the poisoning. It is at that point that Hamlet cracks and goes on the attack. Now, something that I think is so interesting is there are actually very little biographical details known about Shakespeare. In the words of the late Shakespeare scholar and Yale professor Harold Bloom, it seems that Shakespeare was very lustful towards both men and women. He preferred drinking to eating, and he hated lawyers. Other than that, not much info, but scholars do know that Shakespeare had one son named Hamnet, which apparently at the time would have been interchangeable with Hamlet, and that this play, they believe, was written shortly after Hamnet died at the age of 11, which doesn't seem like a coincidence, particularly when you consider that grief, loss, and visitations from the dead are all central to the narrative of Hamlet. To tell the truth, it makes total sense to me that Shakespeare, the bereaved dad, was reckoning with his son's death, and in giving the titular character his son's name, I think was doing the best he could with the tools he had to honor and to preserve his Hamnet. Which brings me to what I would like to talk about today, which is the question of what do we owe the dead, as explored in the tragical tale of Hamlet. First contender for what we owe the dead is remembrance. In Act 1, Scene 5, after Hamlet's father's ghost spills all the tea about his murder, he exhorts Hamlet, if thou hast nature in thee, bear it not. Let not the royal bed of Denmark be a couch for luxury and damned incest. But howsomever thou pursuest this act, taint not thy mind, nor let thy soul contrive against thy mother aught. Leave her to heaven, and to those thorns that in her bosom lodge, to prick and sting her. Fare thee well at once. The glowworm shows the matin to be near, and gins to pale his ineffectual fire. Adieu, adieu, adieu. Remember me. That is Hamlet's father's ghost's plea. Remember me. When I read that, I was instantly reminded of a poem that I love by Christina Rossetti called Remember, where the speaker tells her lover, remember me when I am gone away, gone far away into that silent land, when you can no more hold me by the hand, nor I half turned to go, yet turning, stay. Remember me when no more day by day you tell me of our future which you planned. Only remember me. You understand. It will be late to counsel then or pray, yet if you should forget me for a while, and afterwards remember, do not grieve. For if the darkness and corruption leave a vestige of the thoughts that once I had, better by far you should forget and smile, than that you should remember and be sad. I actually brought that poem up in class because we were talking about the mutual obligations that exist between the living and the dead, and I thought, Christina Rossetti's poem beautifully expressed that, yes, it is the task of the living to remember the dead, but it is also the task of the dead to say to their living loved ones, better by far you should forget and smile than that you should remember and be sad. The dead should not want to constitute themselves as the tyrants of the living, any more than the living should want to obliterate those that have preceded us in death. We should each, I hope, be pursuing the other's best interests. But unfortunately for Hamlet, his dad, maybe because he was a king in life and therefore used to being a bit of a tyrant, is not content to let Hamlet forget. He's not even content with just being remembered. He wants Hamlet to take revenge. This brings us to the second contender for what we owe the dead, and it is revenge. In Act 1, Scene 5, Hamlet's father's ghost tells Hamlet, "List, list, O list, if thou didst ever thy dear father love, revenge his foul and most unnatural murder." Hamlet's father outright says, if you ever loved me, you will smack back. You will not let them get away with it. Which, I'll be honest, is a view that I in my flesh am very sympathetic to. I do tend to choose violence when the people that I love are violated. And that is not unique to me. I was rewatching John Wick recently, and the whole reason that he comes out of hitman retirement is because someone stole his beloved car and killed his dog. It's like the late theologian Jürgen Moltmann said, God's wrath is his wounded love. And one could argue, like it is argued in John Wick, that in responding to a loved one's violation, their wounding, you're not even seeking vengeance, you're seeking justice.
To him, this isn't vengeance, this is justice.
But here's the question. How do we tell the difference? I personally find Amos 5:7 very helpful for this, because prophet says, you have turned justice into bitterness and thrown all your righteousness to the ground. From that, I think we see that justice isn't bitter and it doesn't throw righteousness, doing what is right, to the ground. And if we return to Hamlet and ask ourselves, do we see bitterness and righteousness being thrown down? The answer to both is yes, and it is most evident in his treatment of two women, his mama and his former flame, Ophelia. In his dealings with his mother, the queen, Hamlet's bitterness comes out. On his way to confront her, he says to himself in Act 3, Scene 2, "'Tis now the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. Now could I drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look on." And when it comes to Ophelia, the girl he claimed to love, Hamlet wastes no time in throwing her down. Shortly after his father's ghost appeared to him, Hamlet tells Ophelia, "I did love you once." And Ophelia says, "Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so." "You should not have believed me, for virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not." Hamlet throws down Ophelia in his single-minded pursuit of getting revenge, and the turmoil and angst that causes in her life and psyche ultimately leads to her death. And this is a bit of an aside, but throughout the course of the play, Hamlet will ask himself whether he's acting in pursuit of revenge on behalf of heaven or hell. And occasionally he'll claim, it's both, but I do not think so. I am of the opinion that the fruit proves the root. And the amount of death that results from Hamlet's actions indicates to me that his father's ghost was not from above. It was from below, because we are told in John 10:10 that the devil seeks to steal, kill, and destroy, but Christ has come that we might have life and have it in abundance. Satan has the cycle that circles down to death. He wants to suck people down and in like the Greek sea monster Charybdis. And he'll happily use human vengeance to do it, because like the late philosopher Rene Girard observed, vengeance is an interminable, infinitely repetitive process. Every time it turns up in some part of the community, it threatens to involve the whole social body. There is the risk that the act of vengeance will initiate a chain reaction whose consequences will quickly prove fatal to any society of modest size. I won't spoil the end of Hamlet, but a lot of people die because of the command of a mostly ghostly, bitter old man.
Not a very nice old man!
And when I got to the end, I was like, Hamlet tried to do what he thought was right in pursuing revenge at the ghost's requests. But like Proverbs 14:12 says, there is a way that seems right to man, but in the end leads to death. The end of Hamlet's revenge is death upon death. And who likes death? The devil. That's who. And we can't have that. So we need an alternative, which brings me to my third contender for what we owe the dead. and that is righteousness. If revenge causes death upon death, righteousness does the exact opposite. We are told in Proverbs 10:2 and in Proverbs 11:4, just to make sure the point is made, that righteousness rescues from death. Far from causing death to balloon like a mushroom cloud, righteousness can actually help the dead out. So what is righteousness? Well, it is doing, as previously said, what is right. And I was reading my Bible the other night and came across 1 John 3:10, where we are told that this is how the children of God and the children of the devil become obvious. Those who do not do what is right are not of God, especially those who do not love their brother or sister. We see there that the most important thing when it comes to doing what is right, to being righteous, is love. And a poem that I think provides a great and memorable definition of what love ought and ought not entail is by William Blake, and it is called The Clod and the Pebble. And it goes like this: Love seeketh not itself to please, nor for itself hath any care, but for another gives its ease, and builds a heaven in hell's despair. So sung the little clod of clay, trodden by the cattle's feet, but a pebble of the brook warbled out these meters neat. Love seeketh only self to please, to bind another to its delight, joys in another's loss of ease, and builds a hell in heaven's despite. Obviously, I am Camp Clod when it comes to which definition of love I think is right, because I do believe that love doesn't seek itself to please, nor for itself hath any care, but for another gives its ease, and builds a heaven in hell's despair. And personally, I think if you take the selfish and self-centered pebble view that seeketh only self to please, to bind another to your delight, to joy in another's loss of ease, and to build a hell in heaven's despair, I think that is going to be a stone in your shoe that keeps you from doing what you ought to, what is right, what is loving to do. And here's the issue. I don't know about you, but I'll just speak for myself. Even though I aspire to that Claude-esque type of love, I often find myself with that selfish, self-centered pebble in my shoe. When Hamlet says of himself in Act 3, Scene 1, I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do crawling between earth and heaven? We are errant knaves all, believe none of us. I was like, mood, me too. I am all too often an errant knave going my own way, which is not good, but is also not surprising, given that we are told in Romans 3:10 that none is righteous, no, not one. No one understands, no one seeks God. Frankly, that is a solid summation, not only of the human condition, but also of Hamlet. No one seeks God, no one understands, none is righteous, no, not one. Which is why for us, helping the dead can't be done. Because though, again, we are told in Proverbs 10:2 and Proverbs 11:4 that righteousness rescues from death, we are not righteous. We are proud, ambitious, pebble in shoe, self-centered, and selfish. But you know who isn't? We are told in 1 John 2:1 that if any of us does sin, we have an advocate before the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous. And in 1 Corinthians 1:30 that he has become for us wisdom from God, our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. And how did he accomplish that? We are told in Philippians 2:6-8 that he did not count equality with God as something to be grasped, but rather he emptied himself, becoming in very nature a servant, taking on human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself to the point of death, even death on the cross. And he did all that because, as we are told in John 3:16, he loves us. Jesus is God incarnate, love made flesh, righteousness embodied that rescues us from death. Hebrews 2:14-15 outright says that because we, the children, shared in flesh and blood, Jesus partook of the same, that through death he might destroy the one who has power over death, that is, the devil, and free those who from fear of death had been subject to lifelong slavery. Jesus crushed the devil's head and conquered death. And if you put your faith in him and do like Romans 10:9 says, confessing with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believing in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will not have to go the way of mostly ghostliness, being preoccupied with being remembered by men or hell-bent on revenge. You'll be able to say instead, 2 Timothy 2:8, remember, not me, but Jesus Christ risen from the dead. And you'll have full confidence that he, in turn, will remember you, because he promises in Isaiah 49:16, I will never forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that this was edifying, encouraging, and entertaining, and I hope you will continue to join me as I visit many good books, but live in the Bible. To be or not to be? That is the question. Okay, I just have to share. Look at these pajama pants. Can you see it? I'm obsessed.